Before we begin, some matches are remembered because of the score. Some are remembered because a trophy was lifted. But once in a generation, there comes a match that people remember because history itself seemed to stop for 90 minutes. Tonight was one of those nights. Millions watched. Millions celebrated. Millions were left heartbroken. But no matter which team you supported, everyone witnessed something that will be talked about for years. A legendary comeback. An unforgettable final. And perhaps one of the final chapters in the extraordinary World Cup story of Lionel Messi. After the final whistle, emotions exploded across the stadium. Some players celebrated. Others stood frozen. Many simply stared into the distance, trying to understand what they had just experienced. And once the cameras stopped rolling, extraordinary words began to emerge from players, legends, and people who had shared the pitch with Messi. Some admitted they had never experienced anything like it. Others said they finally understood why the football world speaks about Messi the way it does. Tonight, you'll hear the emotional reaction from Argentina legend Javier Zanetti, the heartfelt words of young star Lamine Yamal after facing Messi in the World Cup final, and what Argentina's own players reportedly said inside the dressing room after one of the most emotional nights of their careers. Stay until the end, because the final message from inside Argentina's dressing room may be the most emotional moment of all. Lamine Yamal's emotional comment on Messi after the World Cup final. Before this match, he said facing Lionel Messi was a dream. Now that everything is over, he says it was both a dream fulfilled and the hardest challenge of his entire life. He admits he still struggles to describe what he felt while standing only a few meters away from the player he had watched thousands of times growing up. The man whose highlights he copied as a child. The player whose movements inspired an entire generation was suddenly standing across from him in the biggest match in football. Some moments feel unreal even while you're living them. This was one of those moments. But putting emotions aside, he says something became painfully clear. Facing Messi is unlike facing anyone else. You're not simply playing against a footballer. You're facing a mind that always seems one step ahead of everyone else. Every passing lane you think you've closed, he somehow finds another. Every move you think you've predicted, he invents something completely different. And then comes the most frightening part. Messi hardly appears to be trying, while everyone around him is sprinting, fighting, and exhausting themselves. He walks. He waits. Then, in a single instant, the entire match changes. That calmness in the middle of complete chaos is something he says he has never witnessed before. Then reality becomes even harder to understand. Messi is 39 years old. He is only 18. More than 20 years separate them. Yet the older player was still the most influential footballer in the entire World Cup. Not only for Argentina, for the entire tournament. That simply shouldn't happen. Football usually tells a different story. At 39, most players become substitutes. They rely on experience because their bodies can no longer dominate matches. That's how football has always worked. Until Messi, he completely shattered that belief. He wasn't surviving on reputation. He wasn't playing because of his name. He was carrying an entire nation once again. He says this honestly. It goes against everything young players are taught about age, time, and physical limits. More than once during the match, he caught himself asking a simple question. How? And every single time, he found no answer. He also believes something else deserves to be said. Argentina reached the World Cup final because of Messi. That doesn't diminish the effort of his teammates. They fought. They sacrificed. They gave everything. But everyone who watched Argentina's journey knows exactly who produced the decisive moments. Who changed games when everything seemed lost. Who carried the weight when nobody else could. Messi did. That's not exaggeration. That's simply what happened. He says he finally understands why so many people describe football through Messi. Before today, he thought those words came from emotional fans. Now, he understands them completely. Watching Messi from television and facing him are two completely different worlds. There have been many great players throughout football history, but greatness alone doesn't explain Messi. Some players play football. Messi seems to become football itself. His entire generation grew up measuring themselves against him. Every child wanted to pass like him, dribble like him, see the game like him. And somehow, life brought him face to face with that same idol in a World Cup final. He says he'll never forget this night. Not because of the result, but because it taught him what true greatness actually looks like. He now realizes how incredibly long the road as if he ever hopes to reach even a fraction of that level. Finally, he leaves one simple message. Thank you, Leo, for everything you've given this sport, and for making an entire generation fall in love with football. Inside the Argentine dressing room after the final, the match is over. But inside the dressing room, silence says more than words ever could. Not the silence of defeat, not even the silence of exhaustion. The silence of players realizing an unforgettable chapter may have reached its final page. One midfielder quietly said, "Every one of us walked onto that pitch with one goal: to give everything for Leo. He never asked us to. He never needed to. We simply felt we owed him everything." His voice reportedly trembled as he continued, "I honestly can't imagine this national team without him. I've spent years beside him. His presence became part of everyday life. Thinking this might have been our final World Cup together hurts more than I can explain." One defender added, "We all know every journey eventually ends. But there are some endings you never want to believe are real. Leo has always been part of Argentina's identity." He continued, "Whenever we were exhausted late in matches, we looked at him and somehow found strength we didn't know we still had." A forward shared another emotional reflection. "Leo doesn't need to speak much. His presence alone changes everything. When he's beside you, impossible things suddenly feel possible." Another player added, "We weren't only fighting for a trophy. We were fighting for him, and for every Argentine who believed in us." One of the goalkeepers spoke about the supporters. "Our fans followed us everywhere. They never stopped singing. They never stopped believing. And we knew so much of that love belonged to Leo." Finally, one veteran player summed up what many inside the room were feeling. "I've shared so many years with him. Beautiful moments, painful moments. But I've never seen anyone wear this shirt with more love than Leo Messi." His voice reportedly broke before finishing. If this truly was his final World Cup, then tonight is one none of us will ever forget. The final message inside the dressing room was simple. Thank you, Leo. Thank you for everything you've given Argentina, football, and every one of us. We were honored to wear this shirt beside you." And one final message was reserved for the supporters. "To every fan who stood with us from beginning to end, thank you. Every sprint, every tackle, every drop of sweat was for you." As the stadium lights slowly faded and the celebrations gradually came to an end, one feeling remained stronger than everything else: gratitude. Because players come and go, generations change, records are eventually broken, but every once in a while, football gives the world someone who changes the sport forever. Whether this truly becomes Messi's final World Cup appearance or not, his legacy no longer depends on another trophy. It lives in every child who dreams of wearing the number 10. It lives in every player who grew up believing impossible things could happen with a football at their feet. And it lives in the memories of everyone fortunate enough to witness this era. No matter which nation you support, moments like these remind us why we fell in love with football in the first place. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and tell us your opinion in the comments. Do you believe the world will ever witness another player like Lionel Messi? Or has football already seen its greatest chapter?